He has washed people's feet. He has given to people. He has provided all kinds of financial miracles to people. He has shown people what it means to love on others. Like when the woman dropped the money in and he was like, look at how much faith she has. He's shown people what that means. He has taught people. He has humbled himself. He's taken the lowest seat, right, in some of the places that he's been to. These are the way, and even thinking of that one, because this one really has been sticking with me. With the rich guy, he loved him by giving him a truth that he was unwilling to actually even accept. So he has loved people in very sacrificial and extremely uncomfortable ways. Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I'm your host, Kathy Carter, and I'm bringing you the Bible in 365 days in chronological order using a reading plan from oneyearbibleonline.com. Today is day 304 in that reading plan. By the way, you go on the website, you would look up chronological Bible reading plans. Download one, you can print it, it's free, or you can click on a link and you can go every day to Bible Gateway. It'll take you right to the reading. So anyway, it's day 304 and it is October 30th. Our reading today is John 13:31 through 15:17, Mark 14:27 through 31, Matthew 26:31 through 35, and Luke 22:31 through 38. So I'm jumping right in. If you have never been here before, I always encourage you to go back to the beginning. And today, I feel like today is like a catalyst, like why it matters to go back to the beginning. Today was one of my favorite readings, but I'm going to go front. So I'm going to do about a 2-minute history. But if you have never been here before, listen. If you find it a blessing, go back, start from the beginning, and work your way back up to where we are now. So if you've been here before, fast forward 2 minutes, and we should 2 to 2.5 minutes, and we'll be in the actual reading. God made this entire world. So I'm starting with the premise that this Bible is true and everything that is in it is the truth, right? So I just wanted you to know that, like, kind of that's my starting point. There is a God, and he is a supernatural being that we can neither see nor hear nor touch, right? So this is a being that is outside of ourselves. So we have to have faith that this being is real, and this being created everything that you see in front of you. The heavens, the earth, everything in the atmosphere, the stars, the sun, the moon. So every single thing that you know to be true, the Lord created all of those things. And then he created us as humans. And so he built us up out of the dust. And then he breathed in his image, by the way. And then he breathed life into us. And then once he breathed life into us, he put us in this garden that he created that was perfect. Anything and everything that humans needed was in that garden. And he said, the only thing I don't want you to do is I put this tree here, and I don't want you to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now we can go back to the beginning and talk about why that matters. But the truth is that a tempter came in, tempted them, and they did wind up eating from the tree. And when they ate from the tree, they severed some of the relationship between humans and the Lord. So instead of being in full community with humans, now they're severed. Now we're like away from him, and we're not in full community with him. And so what he has done, because we're not completely fully with him anymore, he keeps sending humans in his power. He keeps sending humans to save this nation of people. And every time they save this nation of people is supposed to be drawn to the Lord. And when they are drawn to the Lord and they see who the Lord is, they act in a way in accordance with the Lord. And then the rest of the world is supposed to look at that and go, oh, who's the God they serve? I want to serve that God as well. They've always been ambassadors on the earth. Because they are human, and we can see with humanity around the world, it was never complete, right? They were never the perfect one. And so God sent himself in the life of a human. He was born through a woman named Mary. And so he was human, and he was also God, which is definitely a hard concept to understand. So if today's your first day, you definitely need to go back and get a bigger picture of what that means. And Jesus would go all up and down the nation of Israel in which he was born in, the ambassadors to the world, and he would explain to them how he was the Son of God, and he would perform all of these miracles, and then he would teach them what it means to be a follower of God. Now, we are coming onto this place where the Pharisees, the leaders of the Israelite people, are trying to kill him. So he's in this, the Passover is happening. and he's in this place with all of his men, with all of his disciples, and they are eating from, they're eating the bread, they're drinking the wine. So that's where we were yesterday. So today, on October 30th, Judas has just left. So he was letting them know, prophesying essentially that Judas was the one that was going to betray him. And I do say supposedly, but it was definitely a prophecy, because he would only know that through prophetic understanding, that Judas was betraying him. And then as soon as Judas left, it says when he was gone, Jesus says, now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. Most of our reading today is from John, and John, I always say, is poetic, and that's probably not the right word that I'm thinking of, but it's very like more artistic language. And in some ways, I know in a very black and white world, it's harder to understand, right? It doesn't have clear directions. Do this, then do that. Do this, then do that. Or, even his Sermon on the Mount. This is definitely, I think, a little more vague. I like the way this reads, because that's the way my brain kind of reads things. So this, to me, the Son of Man is now glorified because Judas has gone out to do the very thing that needs to be done in order for the glory of the Lord to be revealed. Right now, Jesus is living his life very similar to every other prophet that has come. Now, bear with me, because probably people are going to freak out just a little bit. He has definitely done more, right? Probably even more than Elisha, which, if you go back to the Old Testament, was one of the prophets who did the most amount of miracles. And I'm going to say that Jesus has definitely done more than him. However, in the grand scheme of things, he is resurrecting people, which Elisha has done. He is healing people. He is releasing demons from people, and he is teaching. And now he's summed up probably what all the prophets have done, but he's still, although he's telling them this, he's the Son of Man, he still is human, right? He still looks like a human. He acts like a human. He's just letting them know that he's the Son of God. So now, because of this betrayal that we're going to see coming, this is why he is being glorified. So it says the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. So because Judas is going to betray him, he's going to be glorified. Because he's going to be glorified, God is glorified because of that. And there are a lot of ways in which that's true, but what I want to just be very literal about is all of the prophecies that God said about the Messiah are now coming true. So God is being glorified because of that. By the way, glory is it's a couple of different things, but one is like a high honor, so he's being lifted up, and one is a magnificence. And so we see things like, oh, you see him in his glory, which means he's like unveiled and he's in all white and he's hard to look at, right? That's seeing God in his glory. But to be glorified is he's being lifted up. He's being lifted up by a way of being betrayed, which seems really confusing if you are here at this time trying to understand what that means. So let's move on and see. So God is going to glorify the Son in himself by this betrayal, and will glorify him at once. And then he says, my children, I'm only going to be with you a little bit longer, and where I'm going, you cannot come. So you don't have the ability to do what I am doing. And I'm going to say it's because he's God, although they are eventually going to follow him. They're not going to follow him in the same exact way in which he did the things that he did. He says, now, a new command I give to you. This, to me, is the crux of everything. A new command I give to you. Love one another as I have loved you. The new command is not love one another. If we go back to the 10 commandments and every single commandment that he put together in the nation of Israel, those commandments were generally made in order to draw the community together and love one another, because they were supposed to love one another, and then that love would emanate and everyone would see it around the area. Oh, they're acting so much differently than we are. So loving one another isn't the big thing. Loving one another as I have loved you is the new portion of this commandment. Again, I always want to caveat that this is the way that I read it. This is the way that I say it. I'm not coming to you and saying like I'm this scholar that has done all this training or anything like that. This is the way I say it. So the new commandment is love as he has loved. They have lived with him. They have lived with him for 3 years-ish, right? Like time-wise, it looks like it's about 3 years. They have seen the way he loves people. So what they have seen is he has healed people. He has taken demons out of people. He has resurrected people. He has washed people's feet. He has given to people. He has provided all kinds of financial miracles to people. He has shown people what it means to love on others. Like when the woman dropped the money in and he was like, look at how much faith she has. He's shown people what that means. He has taught people. He has humbled himself. He's taken the lowest seat, right, in some of the places that he's been to. These are the way. And even thinking of that one, because this one really has been sticking with me. With the rich guy, he loved him by giving him a truth that he was unwilling to actually even accept. So he has loved people in very sacrificial and extremely uncomfortable ways. He hasn't loved him like when you first like date someone, and I'm old now and I've been married a really long time, but when you first see that someone and you're like, it like sparks like all this internal emotion in you, right? And then you're like, I want to be with them every second of the day. Like I love everything about them. The truth is that's just an inner emotional feeling. It didn't really necessarily always have feet. Sometimes it had feet. And the expression has feet means to do, right? Like an action. So it didn't always necessarily had an action. It was a feeling that you had inside of you. And a lot of times it was based on something that they did, right, for you. This is not that same kind of love. This is a extremely sacrificial love. And this isn't even counting what he does after this. This is just all that they've seen so far in being with him. Love everyone as I have loved you. That's how you have to love one another. So we need to be his image on earth. We need to be looking at this. And this is why I say, for me, this is the crux. And this is why I've done this. You can't understand what he has done on this earth if you haven't read his book. If you haven't read his book and you're just sitting in church on Sundays, you are missing not just the big picture, right? Because we can get, like a pastor can bring us a big picture, but we're getting, like, even if you've just listened to me, you're getting my perspective on the big picture. And I'm trying my hardest to bring you as much information as possible. Wow. But the truth of the matter is these are depths that go so much further than I can go in 25 to 30 minutes, even on a daily basis, even on a yearly basis. I do it all the time, right? These are depths that we need to get in and dig in and be in all the time. We need to know the person that we're imaging, right? We need to understand, how did he love? Who was he, right? So like going back to Old Testament, because you would go, oh, well, I just look at the words of Jesus. No, you need to go back to the Old Testament. Why was Jesus sent? And then, because we know why he was sent, then we understand what his words mean and what his actions imply. And then when we understand that, that's how we can do it. We lack full knowledge if we don't understand from beginning to end of who he is. And really, unless we keep going back, because we can get into this series of rote, like, oh, I wash people's feet, and so I'm just going to keep washing people's feet. Oh, I feed the poor, and I'm just going to keep feeding the poor. And while there's goodness to that, it's not enough. It needs more, right? So because maybe for a year you're going to feed people, and maybe the next year you're going to be called to teach, and then the next year you're going to be called to disciple, and then the next year you're going to be called to be in a prison ministry, right? We don't have necessarily one little tiny path that we need to do all the time. God has opened us up to all of these things. And what he wants is for you to live an abundant life doing the same things that he did in the 3 years that he was here. So then Simon asks him, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus says, where I'm going, you can't follow me. So then they start getting like a little bit upset. Like, why can't I follow you? So he says, Lord, why can't I follow you? I'm going to lay down my life for you. In Mark 14, verse 27, he says, you're all going to fall away. So you're all going to say you're following me, and you will eventually follow me, but you're all going to fall away. This is going to fulfill, this is not because of the prophecy, it's going to fulfill the prophecy that says, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. And this is a sign when people read this book, and they, when the Israelites have read this book, and they also read Zechariah, and then they go, oh, I watched when Jesus died, and then all of his sheep scattered. And they're going to go, that's the fulfillment of that prophecy. This is why they have this information in here. So it's a sign to anyone who understands that, to understand that Jesus was the fulfillment of this. And Peter, of course, is in full denial. As I would say, like, as Peter is, right? Like, Peter's so outrageous. And so he's like, never me. Like, I would never do that. And then he comes and he says, Simon, Simon, in Luke 22, he says, Satan has to sift all of you as wheat. For those of you who have been with me, if you go back to Job, in the book of Job, Satan was given permission to sift Job like wheat. And as probably you guys read that book, if you read it back with me, and I hope you kind of felt like, man, this seems so unfair. Why was Satan allowed to sift Job like wheat? And not only that, but God was like, hey, have you seen my servant? Like, you should go down there. Right? So it's not just that Satan has asked to do it, but God has fully and wholeheartedly given him permission to do that. And here it says, he's asked to sift you like wheat. He's going to be allowed to do that, which essentially means, as he did in the very beginning, he's going to tempt and try. What's going to happen when he tempts and tries? And Jesus says for Peter, you're going to actually turn away from me. So that before the rooster crows for three times, you're going to turn away from me. And he says, but in verse 32, Jesus says, but I have prayed for you, Simon. I thought this is so powerful. I've prayed for you that your faith may not fail. So you might turn from me. And again, this brings me back to that image of they're clean, but they have dirty feet. So there's still like this portion of them that needs to kind of be cleaned on a regular basis. And I feel like people are going to come at me hard for this, but I do feel like there's something to be said about this, that like your heart is clean. You love me. You put your faith in me. And yet there are times where we sin, right? We all have to admit, like there are definitely times when we sin. This is why someone from outside the faith can look at us and go, oh my gosh, I'm not following that Jesus. Those people that are in the church are such hypocrites. Because in some ways, there is some truth to that. We do still sin. Tripping on my words again today. But Jesus has prayed for them, and he says, and when, so I've prayed that your faith doesn't fail, that it is not complete, right? Like when this happens to you, you don't just go, oh, that's it, I'm done. This was never what I thought it was to begin with. But he prays that he turns back, and when he turns back, he's going to strengthen his brothers. Obviously, there's something in Peter, right, that the Lord sees that he knows has the ability to strengthen his brothers. And again, it's probably maybe some of that impetuous nature, like he just kind of says what he thinks, and his emotions are always on his sleeve. He doesn't necessarily hold anything back. And so Jesus is like, I pray that you're not going to fail, and I pray when you do turn back, you are going to be the strength to your brothers in order for them not to fail. So even after all of this time that these 12 are faithfully following the Lord, have seen everything that the Lord has done, the Lord is now prophesying what is going to happen to him. And when it happens, he's like, Peter, you're going to turn from me, but I'm praying that it doesn't fail. Right? This is a testament to us. And I think I might have said it yesterday or the day before. This is really important. I'm not saying every day you got to go, am I saved? Am I saved? Am I really saved? Do I really think I'm saved? Being certain in your faith isn't about questioning whether you're saved all the time. It is about questioning the dirtiness of your feet. And maybe I pulled that in, and maybe that's a little, but you know what? It is about, like, there are times when I fall. My faith hasn't failed, but I fall. And how do I respond to that? And I think that we all need to know that from the best of us from the longest living Christian that you know, right? Faithful Bible believing prayer warrior that you know, all the way down to the person that just chose to follow Jesus yesterday. There is a chance that we will get dirty. What do we do with it? And it's okay. Like it's part of our nature as humans. But then do we deny our fault? Do we deny that we've done something wrong in church to our brother or sister? And then compile that denial with more denial, and then with lying to cover that denial, and then getting hostile and angry with someone, and then causing division. Right? Like now you've compiled all those things, and now you're getting further and further and further, right? And then he says, you don't want your faith to fail. So I pray that you turn back. And I pray when you turn back, you strengthen those people around you. Think about what that means when you can openly admit, like, I failed hard. I've told probably this before, but I was a Christian for like 10 years, and I failed horribly. I lied, and I like horribly. And you know, you do everything that like cover those things up. But I was able to turn back to the Lord, and now I'm here, and I'm prayerfully hoping that this has the ability to strengthen my brothers and sisters in Christ, and to know that like if you've been there too, it's okay, but you turn back to the Lord. One day, if you haven't been there, one day you might, and it's okay, and you turn back to the Lord, right? You are that one that comes back, and you'll see eventually what Peter winds up doing. I've gone into that enough. So then he goes, then he says, remember last time when I sent you guys? So he's kind of wrapping everything up, and he's like, this is sort of my time. And he said, remember last time I sent you guys out and I sent you to go meet with people? I sent you out with nothing. And you just took, like, I told you not, don't even bring a cloak. This time it actually looks really different. So this time when we're going out, we need to be prepared, which I love the idea of this. I'm not 100% sure why. I'm like, because kind of like beforehand I can see it, but afterwards I'm like, I'm not really sure why. And, you know, I feel like Jesus would know these things, but he says, if you have a purse, which a purse back then was to, I mean, a purse now, we know it holds, like for a woman, right? It's mostly our life. I got everything in it. I got my, you know, my chapstick. I've got my money. I've got my license. I've got my gum. I'm trying to think like other things I have in there, like all my glasses. So I have like a whole plethora of things in my bag. But that, or my purse. I don't really carry a purse, but something like a purse. But here everyone carried a purse, and it literally was a change purse. It held coins in it. So he says, essentially he's saying, bring your money. And then he says, bring your bag. So your thing with stuff in it. So bring your money, bring your stuff. And then he says, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. So the thing that is meant to protect you and keep you warm and keep you safe and shelter you if you need to and lay on it when you need, right? Like all these, sell that in order to get a sword. And so then they come later and they say, oh, we have a couple of swords. And he was like, perfect. That's exactly what we need. And so he has them come with their swords. Now he moves down. I want to move down because this kind of jumps sections a little bit. We're going back to John. And then he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, also believe in me. My Father's house has many rooms. And he said, I'm going there to prepare a place for you. So now we're back to that, like, where are we going? Because they think it is a literal location. Understandably so. Again, I know the end. I know Jesus dies. I know all the stuff that happens. But here, we're sitting here, and they don't know that Jesus is dying. What they know is they're sitting with him, and he's like, I'm going somewhere. They've been following for 3 years. Why can't I come with you? Well, you can't come where I'm going. You're not ready to be where I'm going. And he says, but I'm going to come and I'm going to take you back to be with me. So I'm going, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And I feel like still, even in my mind, I sit and I think about it and I go, it seems so literal. Like I'm going to go to the country. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to make sure there's enough rooms in that house. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to get you guys. And then we're all going to go and we're all going to sit in the house and we're going to like live large, whatever. Right. Or if they thought he was Messiah king, I'm going to go, I'm going to take over this kingdom. I'm preparing the rooms, and then I'm going to have people come back and get you, and then you're going to come and live in the rooms with me. I feel like this is where their minds would have naturally gone to. So he says, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also can be there. You know the way. And Thomas goes, I don't even know where you're going. How do I know the way? And this is the famous line. He says, I am the way. Again, you're thinking directions. Am I going north? Am I going uphill? Am I going in the valley? Am I going? And he says, I am the way. We need to stop worrying about the actual, like, what is, even like this idea of, and I went through this. I went through this whole, like, I was like all in, and I thought, what does God want from me? I'm going to do a prison ministry. I'm going to do a Bible study. I'm going to lead something at my church. I'm going to write, like, and I was like shooting darts at a dartboard, because I was like, I don't know what it is that God wants me to do. I'm just going to do everything. And then whatever feels good, I'm going to stick with. We don't need to know that. We need to be in Jesus, because he knows where he's taking us, and he's just going to take you there. And I'm not saying don't try certain things, but leave your faith, leave your comfort in Jesus. And it might not be today. It might not be 6 months from now. It might be 2, 3, 4 years from now, because he might have some more preparing for you. in order to send you wherever it is he's going, but you need to be in him in order to know where you're going. Don't make the thing be bigger than the one, right? Like, oh, I want to do, again, I'm just going to use prison ministry because I feel like it's a big one. I'm going to do prison ministry. Like, it's really important to me. I want people in prison to know the Lord. Amazing, right? And I'm not saying don't dip your feet in it. Listen to what God has to say for you. That might not be your place. It might be, but it might not be your place. And so just have faith in the Lord. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. These are all words they would have understood. I am the truth. I am the everything. Just like God was always true. And what we always did was understand that God was true. He's saying, I am true. So I am the way to all things. I am the truth of all things. And I am life. What are your choices? Life or death? Jesus is life. Anything else is death. He follows up and says to him, he says, no one comes to the Father except through me. I want to make a minor caveat, and I just really tiny thing. He's talking directly to the people. He's talking directly to his apostles, but this is also the people that he has been with. So if we start asking about, well, what about all the Israelites that never met him? And there were some, right? The important thing is, and this is why our job is so important, the important thing is anyone who knew him, he's the way. He became the way into the Lord when he came down here and made all these sacrifices. And so we need to let people know who he is and know that he is the way. And so when we go, isn't it just going to God anyway possible? No, he's going to say, if you've heard my name, I'm the way. I'm the one that you need to, I'm the bridge that connects you here on this earth with life with the Lord. He said, if you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and you have seen him. So again, I'm going to say, here is him being a little bit more literal in saying, I am God. Philip says, Lord, show us the Father. And he says, don't you know me, Philip? I am the Father. Don't you believe that I am in the Father and that the Father is in me? And I have an image in my mind. I always have these images. And I just think to myself, like, so he says it to Philip, right? Who is one of his apostles. And they're still confused. And then he kind of says, don't you know me? And then his eyes are sort of like released open. And he's like, oh my God. And now he can see who Jesus is. One of the things that they note about Jesus, and I think Isaiah, they make it pretty clear, like, he doesn't have anything special about him. He doesn't look a certain way. He's not super handsome. Like David, we saw, like, was really handsome, right? Saul was really tall. He was bigger than all the rest. And he was a really big guy. They don't say any of those things about Jesus. And so he reveals himself to us. And that's, again, why you got to read, because he reveals himself to us. The more you are in and with him and listening to him. And he's like, I've been with you. Don't you know me? And I feel like Philip was like, oh, there's God right there. Like I see him in front of me. And then he says, believe me when I say that I'm in the Father and the Father is with me, or at least believe on the evidence of my work. So you can see what I did. So if you don't believe me and my words, believe every single thing that I've done here. And he said, very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works that I've been doing. So the stuff that they saw him do, they believe in him and they're going to be able to do those works as well. And he said, I'm going to the Father and I'm going to do whatever you ask. And I will do whatever you ask in my name so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name and I will do it. I want to take this verse and I want to tell you that this verse, again, is one that, like, everyone's like, well, can I ask for $1 million? He was talking to his followers. He was talking to his closest 12 guys that knew him, that saw what he did, that heard in the way in which he wanted them to live, behave, respond to people. They're not going to ask him for $1 million. That's why he is sure when he says to them, whatever you ask from me, I will do it. Because these are 12 guys, well, 11 at this point, 11 guys that are working for the kingdom. They are loving on Jesus. And whatever they ask, Jesus is willing to offer them. because he's knowing in their hearts, right, what they're going to, I shouldn't say what they're going to ask for, but he's knowing that their hearts are with him and for the Lord. And he says, if you love me, keep my commands. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever, the Spirit of truth. This is another thing. So the world can't accept him, the Spirit of truth, because it neither sees him nor knows him, but you know him, for he lives with you and will be in you. So this is what he's promising. Something is coming, but you need to follow my commands, right? He's not kicking back with these guys and saying, good news is you're done, and now I'm giving you your reward, and all is going to be well with the world. He says, when I leave, I need you to keep my commands. And I'm going to send an advocate for you who's going to help you with all those things. And he says, he's going to know you, you're going to know him, and he's going to be in you. So he's going to be in you. Now he's with you, but he's going to be in you. So I'm making an assumption that the Spirit is kind of all around, right? Like even now the Spirit is all around, but with those who follow and love the Lord, he's actually inside of us, talking, encouraging, right? All of those things. So he says, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. And then he says, all of this I have spoken while still with you, but the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I've said to you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give as the world gives. Don't let your hearts be troubled. So he's giving them peace with this Holy Spirit. This is all going to be given to them when he's gone. He said, if you loved me, you would be glad I'm going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. I've told you before how it happens, so that when it does, you will believe. So again, this is going to be another sign. I told you all these things, and when you see this, it's so you will believe. So I give you now in order to strengthen that belief when it does happen. I'm not going to say much more to you, for the prince of the world is coming, and he has no hold over me, but he comes so that the world may learn that I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded of me. The prince of this world is the devil, is Satan, is the adversary, Antichrist, whatever it is that you want to call him. That is the prince of this world. Way back in Genesis, he was given the power over this world because it was torn from us because of the fact that we ate from the knowledge of the tree and of good and evil. And so he's of this world. And so he's putting together all of these pieces, right, in order to do what he's going to do to Jesus. And he thinks he's winning. But Jesus is like, this is what the Father wanted from the beginning. I'm going willingly because the Father has asked me to willingly give myself for you. So Satan's not winning this battle. You're going to think he is, and you're going to think it's all over. But he does not win. And again, it's kind of like a mark my words. He is not winning on this earth. And this is something I do by my own choice. And then he follows up and says, I am the true vine, which I think relates back to, again, all of that in the Old Testament where they were like all these prophets were sent. And they were all there to help and to prune and to do all these things. But Jesus is the true vine. He is the one. True is like, it's like the real thing. So he's like, I am the real vine. I am the one. My Father is the gardener. So he's the vine. He's essentially, I'm going to say the trunk of the tree. And the Father is the gardener. So he's the one who has planted it, who brought Jesus down and is allowing Jesus to be the trunk. And we are, those who follow him, are all the branches on all the trees. He cuts off branches that do not bear fruit. So if you are a branch that bears fruit, those branches get cut off. And then he says, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes. So if you're a gardener, you would probably understand this, or if you've even seen people do it, he plucks and cleans up all the bad stuff in order. So if you're already bearing fruit, it's like that story of the Minas and the story of the bags of coin that they got. If you are in him and of him and following his commands and obeying and doing the things and then producing the fruit, right? Then he prunes you in order to produce more fruit. So the more that you are in him and obeying him, the more he's going to give you all of this stuff in order to help you, in order to be more in him. to produce more and more fruit. So the more you stay in him, the deeper you get in him. And the more you draw back, the less fruit. He's got pruning it, and that branch is eventually going to die, and it's going to get cut off. He said, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you're going to bear much fruit. No branch can bear fruit by itself. We all have to be with Jesus. So there is no like, well, I just do good things. That's great, but that's not bearing fruit for Jesus. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done. This is to my Father's glory. So this is all to lift up the Father. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. So even as we're keeping the commands, remember who gave them to you. Remember why you are doing them. And you're going to remain in the love of Jesus. It is all circular. It's all going to continue to grow and to help. I've told you this so that my joy may be in you, that your joy may be complete. So he's doing this all for the joy. Love each other as I have loved you. He's like, and I lay down my life for my friends. So we're going to see that happen. And he's giving you joy in doing this. We want to serve ourselves. That's the sinful part of our nature. The part that he wants is the part where we give of ourselves. And then he's going to give us joy because we have given of ourselves to other human beings. He said, I no longer call you servants because a servant doesn't know his master's business. And I'm giving you everything. Again, here we go with the book. I'm giving you everything. There is nothing I don't want you to know. We are friends. So Jesus is the Father, the husband, the bridegroom, the friend. He's the brother. I think at one point he says he's a brother to us. And he said, everything I've learned from my Father, I've made known to you. You didn't choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go. I just want to note this one. And he says, go and bear fruit. This is my command, that you love each other. He, much like this with the branches and the pruning and all that kind of stuff, they were following him. They were obeying his commands. They were doing the things that he asked them to do. And when he came to them and he chose them and he said, drop everything, they dropped everything and went with them. And he says, you now are the ones I choose to bear more fruit. That's how we're ending today. It was a long one, and I hope that you were able to stick with me, guys. I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if this has been a blessing. I'll always go back if today was your first day, and I want you to keep reading. See you guys tomorrow.